All right, welcome everyone. So today we're doing a free mini workshop on finding your true north with Susie Snyder. I'm so grateful to have Susie joining us today. We'll also pause in the middle for donations. They're not required, but we do have a special guest that's going to hop on right around 12:30 and tell us about this really radical nonprofit that they started in Portland. So you'll get to hear more on that. And then my organization always matches donations. And then the last part of today, I'll be sharing about finding your true north within your practice. And this could be in your workplace. It could be in a private practice. It could be developing your private practice further. So that's what's on the agenda today. And Susie, I'll turn the time over to you to introduce yourself.
Okay. Well, it's good to be here, and I'm happy to meet all of you and to get to do this. Anyone else who wants to present on an interesting topic, I'm sure Ariana would collaborate with you to make it available to other people and to make it a fundraiser too. So it's fun. She just asked me what I wanted to raise money for. So anyway, this is all kind of a big, generous brainstorm of Ariana as part of her generative and creative practice that has been fun to witness over the years. For those of you who don't know me, I have been a professor at PSU for about 20, 30 years, and recently retired from that. I keep thinking it's still in the wings and I might go back to it, but I'm taking at least a break and focusing on my private practice, which has actually been at least half-time forever since the early 90s. And my practice now is about half supervision and training groups, and then about half seeing clients, mostly adults and couples right now, but some kids and teens and families. And so that's kind of what I do, a mix of lots of things. But I've been teaching these ethics workshops with Lisa Race, who's my dear buddy and colleague, who is one of my favorite people that inspires me and supports me in my work. And we've been teaching workshops that are all-day workshops on ethics of responsive use of self and true north ethics. And so when Ariana said, okay, in 25 minutes, see what you can do, or 30 minutes, I know I'm just going to be giving you a little taste of it, but I want to do that because I think it's valuable to kind of just think a little bit about ethics and how we can use them to empower ourselves rather than oppress ourselves, which is a common phenomenon in this profession, is to feel a little bit oppressed or intimidated by ethics rather than supported by them. So with that said, I think I will start my slideshow if that's okay. So I'm going to go to share my screen, and Ariana, you can tell me whether this is up.
Yeah, it's up.
Okay, so let me just start the slideshow, play from current slide. Oh, I don't want to play from the current slide. Sorry. Did this go back to the beginning? No, just a second. I did the wrong thing. Guess I can just go back this way. Okay. So I just wanted to start out by framing this as this is all based on my personal experience about what empowers people around ethics and what oppresses them. And so over the years of teaching a lot of new professionals and supervising people, and also the years of doing my own practice, a lot of what I've noticed is that certain things seem to contribute to people being more effective in the work, and certain things seem to interfere. And that the biggest thing that seems to help with positive outcome with clients in this work is our capacity to be open-hearted and authentic, and to connect well with clients, and to be responsive and creative, and just bring all those kind of soft skills of being a human being who cares. And that those are actually, as much as they get kind of sometimes undermined because they're soft and they don't sound all fancy and full of professional jargon, they're actually, the research shows that they're most associated with positive outcomes in therapy, that the quality of an understanding and caring, authentic relationship is one of the most powerful variables that contribute to positive outcome. And especially they contribute to clients hanging in there. One of the things that I love is this quote by Richard Schwartz. He says, in this age, whoops, what had happened? I have to move people's faces because I can't read my quote. In this age of highly technical therapies, manualized methodologies, pharmaceutical propaganda, and of course, the managed care generated atmosphere of therapy light, it's hard to remember the healing potential of your open-hearted presence. And yet, patiently being with clients from the deepest core of, let me move your faces again, I keep having them be exactly in my way. The deepest core of ourselves is the most important resource we have to offer. I've learned that if I fully trust the power of myself, I can also trust the power of my client's self. If I show up with confidence and compassion and curiosity, my clients eventually will show up too, and we can spend much of our time together with a river of energy flowing between us. When that happens, we both heal. So that all sounds lovely, and it fits with my experience too, is that just being authentic and open-hearted is the biggest thing we can do. And unfortunately, there's things that get in the way of that. And generally, I've found, especially for new professionals, but I think for all of us, what gets in the way of our open-hearted presence and our authentic connecting is feeling anxious and feeling doubting, and also feeling like we need to be experts in a way where we're posing, or we feel like we're posing, and it can contribute to this imposter syndrome because we feel like we're pretending we're something that we don't really feel sure about inside, because nobody can actually be an expert on all the things that come to us in therapy. So many different variety of issues show up and challenge us. Also, what gets in the way is being rigid, like to think that we have to follow a certain protocol. And unfortunately, managed care and a lot of agencies reinforce that message that we should have kind of a recipe that we're following. Overly focusing on diagnosis, which has also been a result of the way that funding sources have been dependent on diagnosis, or kind of a medical model framework in order to rationalize that treatments should be reimbursed, and documentation and risk assessment. So all of those things, the more we're focused on those things, the more it can kind of alienate us from our clients. And unfortunately, ethics trainings have a way of inadvertently contributing to these things that get in the way. So this is kind of the thing that made me and Lisa originally interested in presenting about this, as we started talking about how we often dreaded ethics workshops, and that we came home after ethics workshops feeling like we were going to get in trouble from the ethics police or something, and that maybe we weren't doing things the way we should. And it can just contribute to this general feeling of big brother's watching me, and I should do things a certain way, and if I'm not doing them. So it puts us into this kind of pretending mode. I remember one time early in my profession, I was recording a session, and it was a session I hadn't usually videotaped. I was videotaping for my supervisor to review, and the whole session went terribly. It was there was less vitality in it, less connection, less movement for the client. And in the end of it, when I thought we were done, I turned off the video, and we started kind of chatting like after the video was done being filmed. And we both started laughing and giggling and talking about what she really wanted from therapy. And I just realized that I had like taken off my human persona and been being, a professional, because I thought I should be, since I was getting videotaped. And it was just a very good example of how not being authentic disconnects us and keeps us from being effective. So there's kind of these two flavors of ethics, and on the positive side, I don't want to throw all ethics out the window. They are aspirational values connected, certainly with the social work ethics. I know I love the values, the 6 values that they talk about of relationship and self-determination and social justice, and I can't rail them all off, but they're wonderful, and they come out of this communal wisdom about how to serve people and also how to do no harm. So those are good things, and it's good that we're trying to recognize the complexity of supporting people and being as self-reflective and careful as we can be. So nothing wrong with all of that, but there's these kind of stressful aspects of ethics that I put in a big red box, because they kind of are like the stop sign that stops us from being human beings, is this notion that we should kind of be in this hierarchical relationship with clients, and that we need to be experts And we need to focus on these things like documentation and diagnosis and kind of following these inflexible protocols of evidence-based practice or something that take us out of kind of a flexible, responsive approach to clients. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what that does, what these kind of stressful types of ethics do to our relationships with clients, because in particular, when we're thinking that we need to do this top-down model of service delivery, it has a very big impact on how clients experience the process and how we experience the process. And so those types of ethics create this top-down notion that the therapist is the provider and the client is the patient. The therapist is fixing, providing, being expert, wiser, whatever. And the client is the patient who's struggling, that we have to figure out what's wrong with them and we have to fix it. And it's a lot of pressure on us. And it's also kind of disempowering and pathologizing for the client. And so just to kind of lay that out a little bit in more of a busy slide, the oppressive ethics are over here on the left. And as we move right, you see that they create a top-down model of service delivery. And then we see that the result of that, there's kind of two results. One is in terms of in the yellow square, the impact on clients, that they feel more like we're seeing them as a problem, that their struggles are getting decontextualized and kind of pathologized within them in the way that diagnosis does that. They have more of a sense of personal failure instead of feeling resilient. They feel disempowered. They feel dependent on this expert to fix them or tell them what they need to do differently. And they feel disconnected from their own strength and their own hopefulness. And as providers, the impact is equally alienating in a different way. So the more that we need to pose as experts, the more pressure we feel, and the more we get imposter syndrome, and the more we get exhausted and burnt out. And so when we have to assume the top of this hierarchy, it not only is oppressive to the client, but it's oppressive to us because it alienates us from the ways that the work can feed us. And so what I am wanting to put forward is more of this reciprocal partnership kind of relationship where we see ourselves as partnering with clients. And I like to use phrases like partnering, collaboration, being a fellow traveler, that we're just getting with them, putting our two heads together to try to focus on the challenges of how to help them flourish more in life or how to help them decrease the things that they're struggling with. And that when we can do it in that way, the effect on the client is that they feel more of a focus on their strengths, more of a sense of problems are being contextualized rather than located inside of them like it is in the medical model. And then thus they feel more of a sense of resilience. Like when you have a problem contextualized, you feel more like, wow, I have been dealing with poverty, or I've been dealing with racism, or I've been dealing with some parents who have a lot of shortcomings. And as a result, I've had to be really resilient, or as a result, I've struggled in these ways, but it doesn't feel so much like a personal failure. And so more connected to a sense of my own strength, a feeling of empowerment and hope, and that the kind of pleasure that comes out of partnering, that it's a much more dynamic and collaborative and authentic place, and it can feel like the caring that happens within that relationship is more trustworthy and real, which is hugely important, especially for clients who are dealing with trauma, which is just about all of us. And so then as a result for us, it means that we don't need to pose as experts. We get to recognize client strengths and focus on them. We feel less pressure to fix problems and more of a sense of teamwork. And what happens is the work feeds us. It feels inspiring, it feels fulfilling, and we feel more fed by it, so that we can see a whole series of clients in a row. And at the end of the day, we can feel like, wow, we had a lot of really wonderful, inspiring, collaborative conversations with people who appreciated our support and who have strengths and have resilience that we can tap into in this work. Sounds simple enough. So I've kind of written down my favorite thoughts about what would be sustaining or supportive ethics. So an ethic of partnership, of being a fellow traveler, of valuing uncertainty and curiosity rather than valuing expertise, of valuing the idea that finding hope and strength is actually a really important skill that a therapist needs to have and needs to be privileged up front over finding fault or finding pathology, and that it's our responsibility to learn about, dig up, be archaeologists of hope and strengths and dig them up and highlight them and document them rather than just documenting problems. That the more we can bring our open-heartedness, our authenticity, our humor, our informality, that those are positive things. Those aren't just us kind of straying from being a professional. Those are at the heart of our best professionalism. So sharing our humanity. So those are kind of the ethics that I want to champion. How am I doing for time, Ariana?
You have about 10 minutes. You're doing
okay,
great.
Good. So given all of that, I'm just breezing through this really quickly, and we can take some questions if we want to. I know we want to make sure we get done by 12. We take a break at 12:30 for our guests to speak. So I wanted to talk a little bit about self-care practices as they relate to all this, because in many ways, self-care is an ethical practice. That us being good at taking care of ourselves is at the foundation of our effectiveness, at least in terms of if it allows us to have this kind of healthy, heartful presence with clients. That when we take good care of ourselves, we can be more energetic and hopeful and more emotionally available, more calm and balanced. We want to bring our kind of Zen, full-bodied strength, all of our personal gifts, all of that to the work that we're doing. And so when we take good care of ourselves, we're in a much better place to do that. One of the problems I have with self-care is it's called self-care. And I know in the School of Social Work, we've been trying to do a better job of talking about the balance of self-care and community care. And that a lot of times when people work, especially in community mental health, busy, underfunded community mental health agencies, they're not getting taken care of by the agency in the way that they need to feel sustained and supported and calm and energetic and all of those things. And so caseloads are too high. There's not enough support and supervision. The types of clients are very high needs, and the level of services that you're allowed to provide to them is sometimes very limited, that you can only see people every other week, or you just can, see them for 8 sessions or something. And so it causes us to feel a lot of despair and exhaustion and burnout because of the way the agency is not able to take care of us. And I don't want to blame agencies. I mean, I think some of them are poorly organized and poorly led, but a lot of them are just so underfunded that they're running their staff ragged as a result. Currently, it seems like underfunded and understaffed is the name of the game, that agencies have not enough people. Nobody's filling the empty spots, and people who are left there are working double overtime. So when I say self-care, I also mean sometimes advocating for the care that you need from the systems that you're in. And it also sometimes means getting out of those systems if they're too toxic or unsupportive, that they're soul killing. And I know many of you in this training right now, I've worked with individually about getting yourselves out of agencies that are killing your souls. And that's not an easy thing to do when you don't have a lot of other options. But at any rate, sometimes that's all that's left in order to take care of yourself. So I wanted to say a few things about self-care outside of work, but I think the more important thing is self-care inside of work, because when we really need the care is when we're in the midst of functioning. And so I want to talk about both, but I think that there's a misnomer that self-care is like you taking a bath after work, or something. But outside of work, one is making sure that we have people that support our work, so that not just when we're with our clients, but outside of that time with clients, we get places that we feel deeply understood and seen and validated. And I always tell people, if you don't have a supervisor who can validate and empathize with your struggles, find someone additional to talk to. Sometimes you don't have the flexibility to change supervisors, but you can find people, colleagues, friends people who you can get what you need from in terms of support and validation. Making sure that you have tended to those basic needs of rest and exercise and food and intimacy. Finding ways to create balance so that if you're working a lot with people who are very traumatized and have very sad stories or life circumstances that are majorly traumatic or marginalized, it's good to make sure that you also have sources of hope and joy in your life, and that you're spending time with healthy families and people who are thriving, because otherwise the world seems like a very dark place. And that you're engaging in activities that really fully bring you into flow outside of work, because that's a big way that we refuel. So those are some things to do outside of the work itself. But I think the more important thing is to think about how can we position ourselves in the work so that it isn't so exhausting, and so that we're taking better care of our souls. How can we make sure that we're being fed by the work, by feeling the compassion and the meaning of the work? And what are some perspectives we can hold on to that are self-care perspectives? And so you'll recognize how these things, as I go through them, parallel the kinds of things I stuck in there as green light ethics. So position yourself as a fellow traveler rather than an expert. And that might mean, needing to really say that to our clients, I'm not an expert, I certainly have worked with these types of issues before, and I think I can be helpful. But the important thing here is that we both put our heads together to try to make sure that what we're doing fits for you. And you're going to be the one who can decide if, what's a good fit. And you also have lots of wisdom. You have things you've been doing to survive and gotten this far, and we need to tap into those. Experiencing your relationships as partnerships, and then they become mutually feeding. So you get fed and inspired by the client's growth and change and contributions to the process. Bringing your real self to the work. And so giving yourself permission to be playful, to be loving in a very authentic way, to not feel like the L word is a bad word, but that our feelings of love towards our clients are a lot of what gives us energy. And that as long as we have a clear sense of what that means in terms of they're not there to meet our needs, but we can be touched by them in ways that not only mean a lot to us, but mean a lot to them, to know that they're inspiring us or warming our hearts, or that we're feeling meaningfully impacted by the work that they're doing. Honoring our clients' strengths. And so this is a self-care practice. If we spend time up front learning about our clients' strengths and resources and pointing them out and giving attention to their resiliency and their gifts, it actually brings us hope and relief and a sense that, okay, there's something here I'm working with that can actually aid in the process. And this isn't just a person that has nothing that they can offer on their own behalf. Honoring our own strengths. And so we need to find places where we can celebrate our own strengths and be celebrated, because if we can go into the work knowing I have real things to offer, and I know they've been really helpful, and I feel confident about that, it's much less exhausting. Remembering that the person's not the problem is the problem. And so this comes out of narrative therapy, but it's just this idea that our system of diagnosing can locate problems in people in ways that are totalizing of their identities and kind of like it's intrinsic to who they are, and that it's much more helpful in terms of hopefulness and in terms of empowering the client to see that the things they're struggling with aren't who they are, that they're a person struggling with depression, a person struggling with anxiety, a person struggling with a temper problem, but that they're not, an anxious disorder or a depression disorder or an ADD or whatever that is, or a borderline personality. Noticing and celebrating small steps as well as profound successes. And so much of this work, I often say this to my supervisees, change is small and incremental, and that it's very important to celebrate little things, because we have this notion that somehow we should be able to transform people's lives and issues very quickly. And that's generally, certainly in my experience, even with lots of resource and motivation, I haven't been able to make transformative changes in my own struggles very frequently. Usually the changes are small, but if I can see them and celebrate them and build on them, they're very significant and they make a difference. making sure that we are both kind of courageously advocating for change, but that we're also accepting that sometimes there's like a huge current of marginalization or trauma or lack of resource that is winning the day, and that all we do is have a little paddle and we're trying to help them get to an island or create a little tributary, a little side channel or something, but that we can't stop that river sometimes, and that we need to be able to be accepting of that. And then just creating structures in our work and boundaries that help us function within our limits. And so something as simple as making sure we're ending our sessions on time so that we have time to go to the bathroom or wash our face or get a snack, or finish some notes or something, but just figuring out what to whatever extent we can allow this within the agencies and the context we work in, what are the structures that are going to create a little bit more self-care for ourselves. So those are some things. I think that actually, oh, I was going to say, should I save that for later, Ariana, or should I mention this now?
I think now is great.
Okay, so Ariana had encouraged me to share my website with people, and I'll try opening it. I don't know if this works, if I can open it. Okay, so Ariana actually helped me create this, and it's this kind of fun little website that has about 5 or 6 different training modules that I've done that you can get continuing ed credit for. And you can sign up there, and you pay for them through there's some payment process, and get your CEUs. So it has like an introductory video, and then it has this one that I just talked about, and finding your true north, and it has, oh dear, nope, there we go. Has some other ones. It has a free one on supportive confrontation that's just a short video on how to use the skills of supported confrontation. It has a 6-hour one on trauma and on supervision if you're going to start supervising people. And it has another one on responsive use of self in ethics, which basically means bringing your whole self to the work. And a little 2-hour one on working with couples. And then it has another one of these little mini workshops that Ariana and I did. And this one is on talking about trauma, and also on what kind of words you can put into your website to help people know who you are and what you're up to, a la Ariana's wisdom. So that's, I think, all that's there. Anyway, there's stuff there. And so feel free to go there if you want. I think I'll just go ahead and close that and stop sharing, and maybe see what time. Oh, we're just at time. So I'll let us shift gears, and then we can come back later for questions or thoughts.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, thanks so much, Susie. So we're going to pause for donations. Donations are not required, but when I ask someone to come speak to us, they don't charge me, and instead they donate their time in lieu of us fundraising for a certain organization. And we have Awadi here today, who is going to talk to us about the organization she started, and then we'll do some donations. So Awadi, do you want to turn on your camera and unmute yourself and tell us a bit about your organization? You're muted still.
Yes.
There we go.
Do you want to put it on speaker? Can you make it so that the speaker thing is, or does that mean I just have to do that?
Yeah, it'll be on your computer.
Okay.
Okay.
Oops, we lost it. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Awadi Matete. I'm from Tanzania, but I'm originally Congolese. I've been here for almost 6 years now, and I'm a single mom. I am in school. I'm studying about addiction counseling. I started this since last year in June. The reason for me to start this is because I noticed a lot of things going on in my community, especially for girls who came here as new, no English, no new culture, so it was very, very hard. And I see a lot of challenging in my community, and I said it like, I want to do something to change this. I know I can't change all, but I need to change something to be better. So I started to empowering women, like young girls, about education, founding resources for people who want to learn English, people who's going to college. Um, Also talking about sexual education, because a lot of us who born in a refugee camp, we don't know about sexual education, and talking about mental health. I have that project, but I never had anybody to come to talk about mental health with the girls I talk to, because that is a big, big challenge in my community. Especially, I have people who doesn't believe in the mental health because of maybe religion or their beliefs. So I spoke with Christian. I remember it was in April when they came to talk about sexual education, and I told Kristen, I need help about mental health. I need somebody to come to talk about mental health because it's a big, big challenge in my community, and I want to change that.
It's wonderful. Zawadi,
Yeah.
I just want to let you know that Kristen Jones, who you're talking about, is a friend of mine. And she, when I asked her about, I was asking for friends of mine about good donation places that we could donate to help with women's reproductive rights. And she just mentioned that she was working with you and that you really had found that the women that you're supporting right now didn't have the information they needed, and that you decided to start these groups. And also a lot of them were being abused and taken advantage of by people in order to get rides, to get groceries and that kind of thing. And so a lot of what you're doing, it sounds like, is creating groups, support groups for them, or educational groups to support, to empower them a little bit.
Yes, I empower them for what I know, like how women can be confident in yourself, because a lot of us who, especially who came from refugees, we don't have that like confidence. We know like we can get something. For me to get something big, I need to get from a man, but that is not true. You can get something big by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you have a way that people can contribute to these groups that you're doing, or what's your sense about how, because folks here are interested in making donations, and maybe you can tell us who they would donate to or how that would work.
Because we just register to get our 501(c)(3), and we don't get yet, but we have fiscal sponsors. So because I know if you donate something, you have to get that back. So we have fiscal sponsor. I send his information to Ariana. So if people want to contact him, I send all the information, his email and his phone number.
Okay.
I think it might be easiest just for everyone to, I know this sounds really shady, but if you want to Venmo me, and then I'll just make a large sum donation to the fiscal sponsor.
Yeah, I think that people can Venmo you with a description in the thing that it's for this cause, for Zawadi. And and then you can maybe send people back an email about how that goes, Ariana, just to update people about how much we raised and what that was for. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I'll send receipts to everyone so you can save it. Yeah. Any questions for the rest of you so far, for Susie or for Zawadi? And you can say questions out loud or feel free to type in the chat.
Awadi, I just want to say that I just feel very inspired about your courage of just taking this on, and also getting furthering your own education so that you can be a resource to your community. And that it's just a precious thing for, I'm sure, your community members to have someone that they feel safe with and who understands them, who can be a resource to them. And it sounds like part of what you're wanting is funding to allow people to get the mental health services that they need. Which is great, but I would think number one is to have people like you who they really trust, who are giving them information and resources.
Yeah, is I'm doing this because I see a lot of people in my community, they don't speak English and they're scared to ask because of the language. And sometimes people they don't feel comfortable to talk with other people that they don't know, but because they know me, so they can be comfortable to talk. Yeah.
Great. Does anyone else have questions for me about the stuff that I presented about ethics and self-care and trying to be your authentic, wholehearted self and some of the challenges of that?
Looks like Rebecca has a question for you, Susie.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, hi, Susie. I loved what you said about partnership and collaborating with the client and showing up authentically and being playful. And I totally agree. And I'm wondering if you have any suggestions about when clients respond to that in a way that that they maybe aren't taking you seriously, or they're saying things like, "No, you're the expert. I'm paying money for you to tell me what to do," that kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, Rebecca. So sometimes when we're happily posing that we're just a fellow traveler, or that we're a partner, that's not what they had in mind. It's not what they want, and they push back against that. And I think one of the things I say is that if we're trying to respect client self-determination and they don't want us to just be their partner, we need to honor that a little bit and clarify what kind of expertise they're wanting to get from us. But I usually do a little bit of a kind of push-pull on that, of just both saying, of course, I have lots of ideas and resources that I can connect you with, or I'm happy to guide you, or here's my best wisdom on this. But then you can kind of back away from it a little bit by saying, like, how does that wisdom fit for you? Or what would you do to tweak that? Or if you were gonna, make an addition to that, what would it be? So you can keep bringing in their voice and their evaluation of it, even though you're kind of giving them suggestions. And the other thing you can do is just mention that, that most of the positive outcomes happen when people feel empowered, that they can have more agency or more impact on their own lives. And so that you want to work with them in a way where both things are possible, that you're being as generous with your expertise as they want, but that you're also helping them be in touch with their own expertise, because it's gotten them really far in life and they can continue to develop it.
Yeah. Any other questions for Susie or Zawadi before we move on? Awadi, thanks so much for joining us and telling us about your organization and for starting it. Such a radical thing to do.
Thank you.
Ariana, I missed the name of the organization.
Oh, that's a great question. Awadi, will you remind us of the name of your organization?
It's called Women Together We Can.
And you have a website. So do you want to share your website in the chat so people can check it out there? I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, right now, because the one I opened, I did before, it wasn't clear. So I think the website will be ready on Wednesday or Thursday, like how I talked with this guy.
Is it okay if I share what you do have up? Just so
Yes.
people can get a feel for it? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to put that in the chat. Great. Oh, I love this. I think we're at about 300 so far in donations. And I haven't checked everything yet. So I'm going to have us move on with the organization or with the meeting. But if there are other questions, definitely feel free to ask or to interrupt. I won't be offended. Oh, yeah, we definitely have a good amount. Thanks everyone so much for donating.
I do have a quick question. Is that, can I?
Yeah.
I'm
absolutely.
just curious, Susie or anyone else, like how, since transitioning to mostly doing telehealth, like how have you noticed that impacting what we're talking about today, if at all? Like if not, not sharing a physical space with the client, have you noticed that being challenging, or helpful in any ways with regard to these?
Yeah, that's a
collaborative
great
ethics?
question, Jocelyn. I think that it's very common to feel much more performative on a screen than you feel in person, and that some of the natural ways that we get comfortable and authentic and human are in the physical presence of each other. And so I think it does take extra attention to make sure that we're trying to do those things. Sometimes I tell people about my room and where it is and where my kitchen is, and make, say if you hear little noises, my grandsons might be playing outside the window, or, trying to make it more human. But I think we have to kind of do that. Like just even saying, can you tell that I'm looking at you right now? Or does this amount of closeness feel right to you? And kind of like, do you like it better if my face is near the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen? And just kind of really just making it as relational as possible and letting them know that that matters. Sometimes I'll say things like, can you feel my empathy right now? Can you tell that I'm just filled with emotion as you're describing that? Or I just want you to feel through my tone of voice that, that you have you're in my heart right now as you're describing that. So just trying to convey affection and caring through the airwaves as much as we can. But I don't know, Ariana, would you add anything to that?
No, I love that idea of that. I know I've heard you ask that question before, Susie, of like, can you feel my caring with you right now? Can you feel, how connected we are? And then orienting them to your space.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything else that I would add.
Yeah, we should
except maybe acknowledging that it's a little awkward.
Yeah. Yes. So
yeah,
go on to tell us about your stuff, Ariana. I'm sure everyone wants to hear about it. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say we're at 365 with donations so far, and with that being matched,
I'm adding 100 to that, but I haven't figured out how to send it, so that will increase a little bit. Okay.
Thank you so much to everybody for donating. We really appreciate it. I really love the concept of wealth redistribution or money redistribution, because we don't always think of ourselves as having wealth. But I love that we can use our money to support different organizations. Let's see. So I'm Ariana. My business is Lloyd Collective, and within that business, my main program is an 8-week program to start a private practice. And I started Lloyd Collective from a place of really struggling. And so part of what I'm going to talk to you about is kind of how to work through similar struggles. And I think when you're in any field, but I think in our field, it's easy to get lost and to lose your focus or your purpose or the meaning. And it's very, very hard to admit that, because we really want to do a good job and we really want to serve others and we don't want to let them down. But it does happen. And I think that even without getting lost, there's always room for reflecting on, is this the best place for me or the best practice for me? And I don't know the answer for all of you. I think sometimes we'll always have a best fit working for someone else. And sometimes we'll always have a best fit just working for ourselves. But I wanted to share that I started Lloyd Collective when I had 2 very young children and really needed a career change because I couldn't keep serving veterans who didn't have housing. It just didn't match with serving also 2 little kids. And so then people started coming to me and asking them, I was doing supervision. So people within supervision started coming to me and saying, hey, how do I do what you're doing? How do I start a private practice? And so I created a program just for that. And it really was created from this space of, similar to what Susie was describing, of feeling connected, feeling creative, feeling supported, and then building from that place. And that's what I'm hoping for all of you, is that you're there right now, or that like the touch points or the way to get to that down the road. So I wanted to share a Venn diagram that I created because I'm really obsessed with Venn diagrams. Let's see if I can get my computer to share it though. Here we go. Okay. Can you hear me at all? No. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen though?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Zoom has changed since I last shared my screen. So I thought for a while of like, okay, if I was a person that was feeling like I needed a refresh, or I just wanted to reflect on where I'm at, what would be the three main things that would help me get there? And what I identified was focusing on your needs, focusing on your abilities, and focusing on your desires. And then within that is three subgroups. And the first is you. The second is your people, whether that's your family, your friends, all the people that really are connected to you. And then the third is community. And I think that when we consider all of these, then what we do is much more meaningful and impactful and sustainable. So the first one I wanted to mention was your needs. So some of what Susie talked about was how important it is for us to meet our own needs. How much sleep do we need? How much time do we need to recharge? What's our income need? And how many hours will we need to meet that? Or need to work to meet that? What are some boundaries we need to set? So this one, a practice that I like to do to identify my needs is to sit down and write out my ideal schedule and just look at like, hey, if I could do exactly what I wanted and I had the whole week, which hours would I work each day and how much? And that kind of helps me understand, okay, then this means I have to work this way, or I have to do these services during those hours. And that's how I'm going to meet all of these other needs. For me, I try to end my workday at 3 before my kids get home, but then occasionally I'll resume it at 8 once they're in bed and do some work then. And that works for me. So kind of finding, okay, what's ideal to meet my different needs. The second one is meeting your relationship needs. So how many hours per week do you need to be available to the people around you? How much financially do you need to support them? What kind of state of mind do you need to be in? And does the place that you're working in now support that, or the place that you want to work support that? And the last is your community needs. And this one, I want to emphasize that this isn't what you're maybe you're expected to do, or the shoulds, or what people are telling you to do. But it's really when you look around your community and you see things, and you see kind of like Awadi talked about, things that make you sad, or another good indicator is things that make you mad, then those are some of the things that you can make sure that your work is encompassing that. I'm going to stop sharing because I feel like you've got the Venn diagram by now. So the next section is your desires. And part of this is that I'm hoping that you do what you want to do. I remember going to work when I was doing, the VA has this program that's a Section 8 housing program, and I did it for 6 years. And I remember going to work and one of the program assistants said, hey, if you're not happy doing this, no one should be doing this. And I remember just thinking, I'm not happy doing this, but what else would I do? And so letting your desires of what you want to do, doing what you love, really be just as much in the balance as anything else. The next one is the desires of the people around you, and what they're saying, hey, this is what we hope for you. And then the third one is the community needs as well. And this is along the lines of seeing what your community, the community desires. So it's along the same lines as seeing what your community needs, but what they are willing to pay you to do. And we want to make sure that we're overlapping, what we need, what we desire, what we want, with what people are willing to pay us to do, because we don't want to work somewhere that we're not really getting paid to do it, or not getting compensated enough, or we don't want to create a private practice or a group practice that people are not coming to us because there's not the desire. And the last one is your abilities. And this one's a fun one, I think. And you want to make sure that whatever you do, it's within your flow. It's what's easy for you. Me working with veterans, took a lot of work for me to be decent, working with mostly white men that were mostly older than me, serving in Vietnam. It was not my skill set. I had to work very hard to develop it. In retrospect, I should have just chose something much easier, but I didn't know at the time. And moving now into building a supervision practice and this consultation practice has been a much better fit. One way to figure out what your skills are to interview someone that really you trust their opinion. And when I was building Lloyd Collective, I talked to Susie and I sent her all of these interview questions of like, what do you think I do well? What do you think the community needs? How could I best fit this? So finding people like that, especially if you're feeling a little bit stuck and your confidence is low, or you're just feeling like I couldn't make something better than what I have. Finding those people that you trust and that you sense trust and respect you, and getting their feedback. And so we want to do a lot of journaling, and I'll create a handout and send it with the follow-up video, but journaling on each of these areas and the little sub areas as well, and ideally have the center of like, okay, now I know where I land with what I need, what all these different needs are, what all these different desires, all the different abilities are. And then we do some market research and we see if that thing's out there or if we need to create it. And that's a whole different conversation. But that's kind of one way to go about exploring what's my true north in finding my best practice. Any questions about any of that?
I love that idea of thinking about your ideal schedule. And it's amazing for those of us who are in private practice, how quickly we become lost in a schedule that we have not quite felt like we're controlling, when in fact we control it. And I'm thinking, I'm doing that tomorrow. I am making out my ideal schedule and trying to head towards it, north,
Yes, that sounds fun, Susie. Any other thoughts or questions for Susie or I about anything we've talked about?
I just want to say thank you, Ariana. Thank you, Cindy, Susie. I feel like this is what I needed today. It's been tough working in community mental health. And it was a really good reminder about centering myself and, my desires, my needs. And I also started my private practice, and I put a pause on it because I was feeling overwhelmed, but this is just like a really good reminder of deciding where I want to move, forward. If I want.
Thank you, Gabriela. That's beautiful.
So thank you, and I look forward to taking your training, because I know this is just a summary, but I look forward to taking the other one.
Great.
Longer version of it.
Thanks, Gabriela. Yeah, Susie's 6-hour training meets the Oregon requirements for licensing, so it's really nice that way for ethics. And I'm going to put my link in the chat. I have, like I mentioned, I do 8-week cohorts and we run them 4 to 5 times a year. And I have one coming up at the end of this month. So you're welcome to join if you're wanting to start the private practice. I think that's it for today. We ended just right on time here. So thank you so much for coming and for the donations and your generosity and your attention. We really appreciate having you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So good to see you.
Thanks, Ari.
Thanks to all of
Lisa.
you. Thanks for being such a welcoming audience.
Yes.